That's great. That's great.
Hey everybody, what's going on? I am fighting a nasty sinus infection right now, so excuse me if I sound a little nasally. Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of the Tell Me Something Great podcast. I am your host, Justin Yates, and let me say I am extremely excited to get this podcast up and running. I hope the birds chirping in the background aren't too much of a distraction. It's a beautiful day out today, so I thought I would do this outdoors. Let me first say thank you for tuning in, and I hope that you stick with me during the entire first season I have planned for you guys. I want to mention first, I set up an email account for the show. It is the Tell Me Something Great podcast at gmail.com. This is the first time I've ever used the H5 handy recorder for this type of thing, so it's a little new for me. Anybody got one of these H5s, or H4, or H6, or H8? H1N1? In the first season, I plan to do solo episodes and interviews every other episode. I would really love to get some participation from you guys in regards to the solo episodes, so please feel free to email me any questions you have, advice you might need, suggestions or advice from me. Really, anything is on the table. I read every email and I welcome the questions, so don't be afraid. Let's make this something fun, you know? This is like the 13th time I've started this podcast. And it's funny because when I started, I wrote a script and then I abandoned it. And then I tried to just talk off the top of my head and I just rambled too much. And now I'm back to this hybrid outline script talking off the top of my head with a sinus infection and a broken hand. So bear with me here, guys. Now, I'm going to assume that most people who are tuning into this podcast already know who I am. But if by chance you just stumbled onto the show or you caught a later episode and you're finding yourself going back to episode number 1, I thought it would be fitting to give you guys a small introduction about who I am and what I'm planning with this podcast. My name is Justin Yates. I'm a musician from the Chicagoland suburbs who semi-recently moved out to California due to a nasty back condition. Over the years, I've worked for a number of different music affiliations, from band management to performing to putting on local shows and different events to creating a local music-based magazine, as well as working with J Street Radio on 98.3 FM WRLR out of Round Lake, Illinois. We ran a radio show / podcast for over 7 years. The local music magazine and J Street Zine / J Street Radio was all about bringing you the best of the best in local music locally and also worldwide. That's what J Street really prided ourselves on, finding people from all over the globe that weren't on a major label but were making noise and making great music. Our objective was to try to help people and get the name out there and really take these kids and give them a platform. And it was a lot of fun, and I missed it a lot. And it's doing that podcast with J Street Radio is a huge reason why I wanted to do this again. So sitting here behind a microphone is oddly familiar, yet new and enticing and exciting. Currently, I released my second album, Friend, and have been spreading the word about it while slowly going through physical therapy and numerous lifestyle changes due to my back condition. I've also been doing a lot of work on myself in hopes to fix some of the problems that have plagued me for some time. I suffer from hyperactive ADHD, extreme depression, I have anger issues, the list goes on and on and on. If you guys want to talk about some of this stuff in later episodes, we definitely can. I definitely don't want this first episode to be like, here's all my problems and I want to use this podcast to talk about them. Which, let's be honest, this podcast might just become a stream of consciousness if I don't get much participation, so who knows, maybe it might be. But I still think that there's some relatable parallels there to not only the name, but I think that there can be some relatable, like I said, parallels to your life and some of the things that I've done too. I'm a collector. I like to collect all kinds of stuff. It's a passion I've really dove into over the past few years. As a recovering drug addict who had numerous destructive hobbies in the past, this new one has not only been a better source of time and money, but one that has been really cathartic. In short, my collection ranges from a number of different Adult Swim shows, films, and a bunch more, but it's mainly centered around two criminally underrated shows, Moral Oral and an anime titled Outlaw Star. As much of a nerd as it makes me sound, I'm happy to say that I'm the biggest Outlaw Star collector in the States. It's a show that I've loved since I was 15, and I know it makes me a giant nerd, but I don't care. Something about myself is that I love helping people. The music I write speaks to this. The work I've done inside and outside of this industry also supports this. And my new hobby of collecting has been nothing but the same. Through collecting, I found some really awesome people and helped a number of them find some really hard to find items. My love for helping people, creating, collecting, and much more have really influenced me in wanting to take these passions and do something more with them. Truth be told, that's where the origins of this podcast started. I've seen a lot of collectors become hoarders over time or become nasty resellers that like to take items and just turn them for giant profit to the stupid idiots that want to buy it. And I don't want to do that. I want to take my passions in this and build something greater with people and try to do something more than just collecting. I posted an update video on my YouTube channel in January, and in it, I speak about wanting to do this podcast, what's going on in my life, and a bit more about collecting. I'm going to put a link in the description with a timestamp on it, and I encourage you to check it out if you'd like to know more about why I'm doing all of this. I thought I would export that audio into this and just play it again, or just re-say everything, and for the people who follow me, I thought that would be kind of silly. So check it out if you can, and if you guys have more questions, we can talk about it in the future. I just thought I'd try to be as succinct as possible on this first episode. In short, I wanted to take all of these passions in my life and hopefully find a way to incorporate all of them into this podcast. My plan with the podcast is to release one season before I head to Illinois to work on some new music. If the show is perceived well, I might revisit it after the next project. As I mentioned before, the show plans to rotate between solo episodes and interviews, and the interviews are with some other like-minded individuals in the music industry and outside of the music industry. Some of the guests that I have lined up not only share some of the same passions I have, but some of them are responsible for some of the very things I've been collecting and loving for years. I'm planning to release every episode on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Justin Yates Music. For a number of reasons, it seems like this would be the best platform to put these episodes on. If the show is perceived well in the future, I may put these episodes and more episodes onto Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all that other fun stuff. But truth be told, I thought I would start small, learn as I go, and kind of see how it goes. Now the name. Tell me something great. For me, the name has many meanings behind it. As we continue with the solo episodes and I elaborate on what I'll be working on in Illinois, I think it will become very clear why this name was the right name for the show. It's not only a phrase that I've been known to use on a daily basis, but the logic behind it is one that keeps me motivated through the chaos we call life. I've been diagnosed with hyperactive ADHD, extreme depression, and a bunch more that we can talk about on a later episode if you'd like. In short, Tell Me Something Great has become a war cry in many ways. It's something I embody as well as I try to encourage others to find something great, even in their darkest of times. I think once I get the flow of this podcast, I'm going to have less and less edits going on. This first episode has kind of been a pain in my butt for a few reasons, and that's why you're hearing a few edits going on. But from this point off, for the rest of the episode, I'm going to try to just do as much as I can to not make edits and just talk to you guys, straight from the heart. Podcasting is weird because there's a level of editing, but then there's also a level of editing that should be ignored. And I don't want all of this to be scripted. I want to speak from the heart. And I want you guys to know that I want to do that. And I need you to know it's a struggle sometimes. So if I ramble or I'm stammering or I'm messing up my words like I just did, just try to give me some patience and stick with me because there definitely is method to the madness going on over here. So today I'm coming to you live from inside my new toured vehicle I call Gilliam. I thought it would be fitting to do episode 1 in the van. For those that don't know, I was living in my van when I was writing my first album, The Jig Is Up. It's plastered all over the music video for Lower Your Tone. So I guess this is kind of like a back to your roots sort of thing. I mean, it's a better van. You got a bed built in here, a lot more toys. So it's got some amenities, and I feel like I'm living a life of luxury in this compared to the old van. but I thought it would be fitting, and for those old school fans that have been following me, hopefully that brings a little smile to your face too. As you can hear, the birds in the background don't mind it too much. Here's a random thought for you guys. Something popped into my head recently, and I'd love to get your feedback on it. Do you think that people are unlucky, or do you think that bad luck just happens? Recently, I've been starting to wonder if I have bad luck, or if the universe is telling me something, or if I'm leaving myself vulnerable and susceptible to damage while I'm distracted in creative mode. I don't know what it is, but check this out. So there's a lot. First and foremost, I should say I really hate social media. So there's a lot I leave off social media, but there's a lot of stuff I put on there as well too. And as some of you may know, when I released my first album, The Jig Is Up, I slammed my hand into a car door. And then as soon as that was repaired, I had 6 teeth removed. It really put a damper to the whole CD release debut. It was an interesting time. And then when I released my second album, Friend, most people know I have a horrific back issue, and that just sidelined every single plan that I had possible. These were just some of the bigger things that were going on, but chaos is kind of the norm around here. But right now I'm working on a new project again. And what's funny is I've worked on other projects in between some of this stuff, but whenever I sit down to work on like Justin Yates music, something crazy always happens. Like right now, I almost got blown up by a barbecue. I had kidney stones and I had pancreatitis I was in the hospital for a few weeks ago. And then I basically just broke my hand. There's a bone in my hand that is fractured right now. I'm wearing a plaster cast on my hand. It's really strange. Now, I can say that some of these actions were self-fulfilled and reactions to some of my own problems, and some of them are just freak accidents. But it does start to raise the question of, am I just a goon who's making mistakes all the time, walking with 2 left feet, or is the universe trying to tell me something here, that every time I work on music and I put a piece of myself into it, I'm actually giving more than just a piece of myself? I don't know. Before we get into listener questions, I wanted to mention that I have 2 new t-shirt options and a few different bundle packages available right now at justinyates.net or justinyates.bigcartel.com. I'm basically doing fundraising right now. I'm doing everything I can to pull together the needed funds to hit the studio in the near future. So if you enjoy the music that I've been creating, make sure to support it by picking up some of these items. And if by chance you are a new listener to the podcast and you're not familiar with the music that I make, head over to the website and check it out. Maybe there's something there that you like. I'd love to hear your feedback, so send me a message. If you hate it, if you like it, it's all good. I think I'm going to make episode 1 a little bit shorter just to kind of get my feet wet, get used to this, and give you guys just a small introduction. But I think every episode will grow a little bit more the more that I get comfortable and the more that I got participation from you guys. I'm going to smoke a cigarette, and we're going to get some questions. Answer them from the internet. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, so I got a bunch of questions here from the internet. Some of them have to do with collecting. Some of them have to do with music. I'm going to leave people's names off of these questions for the first episode, but in the future, I'm going to say your name. So if you don't want your name mentioned, don't send your name. Or tell me, hey, don't say my name, okay? Let's start with a question from me, which is, do you see yourself doing some collaborations with other artists in the future? Absolutely. I actually wish it happened more frequently than it does. I've been able to do some ghost writing. Oh, you guys hear that UPS truck? First question is, do you see yourself doing some collaborations with other artists in the future? And the short answer is yes, and I wish it happened more frequently now. I would love to. The long answer is there are a lot of factors that come into play, and it's not as simple as just a yes or no. It really comes down to the job, the song, the person, the objective, just a lot of different factors that come into play. And if you're a musician and you like what I do, and you think you got something that you'd want to collab on, or you want to hire me for, send it over my way. I mean, worst I can say is no, right? But yeah, send it on over. I would love to chat more about it. I love making music with people, and I've been making music with myself for a long time here. So yeah, I would love to do that. All right, let's bounce over to. We'll just bounce back and forth as much as I can. I got more collection questions than I do music questions here, so let's go. What would you want in an expanded Outlaw Star series? The long answer is I don't. I'm perfectly okay with that show never being rebooted again. There's only a select few that get the reboot and it works out, and for the mass majority, it doesn't work out. And I'd rather keep something that I love what it is, and rather than see it completely destroyed. Though in a perfect world, if everything worked out great and everything was right and they did their best to resynthesize that lightning in a bottle, I think I stand with most fans to say that I would like to see a Hilda prequel, find out more about that character storyline. I think that would be really, really cool. Also, the McDougal brothers. And then, I mean, I could ramble about this for a long time, but I'll leave with this last one. I would also like to see more things in the manga be adapted to whatever this new thing would be, because the tones in the manga are a lot darker, and I think that it would make for a lot. It would make for really interesting character development compared to what the anime showed it as. So take that for what it's worth. Next question is, what is the biggest rocket you've ever made? And what he's referring to is a few different resin figures and 3D models that I have here in the collection for Outlaw Star. Outlaw Star is based around this ship. If you've ever seen Firefly or Serenity, which is a little bit more popular, the story is very similar to that. I've actually never made those rockets. They've all been commissioned jobs, so I've never made a rocket before. I guess that's the answer to that one. All right, we got a question, and I will mention this name. It's my buddy Edwin, who's a hardcore fan who actually just helped me do the lyric video for Shedding My Skin, which is also on the YouTube channel. There's a shameless plug for you, and a plug for Edwin. He also makes some really cool dubstep, so I'll put a link in the description if you want to check out some of the music that he makes. But he asks, cryptocurrency, yay or nay? And to be honest with you, I barely have enough money to exist, let alone investing into cryptocurrency. In short, do I think it would be a good idea to see something other than the dollar being used? Yes. Do I think that this is the answer? My ignorance on the topic says I don't know. And that's just because I haven't done enough research. Unfortunately, that's probably the best answer I can give you, because anything else would just be my best estimated guess. I haven't done the research at all. Got another question here. What's your favorite band? I have no idea. You know how much music I listen to? Your favorite band? I mean, I've got a lot of them. Misery Signals is one of my favorite bands. Nickel Creek is one of my favorite bands. But then again, I don't know. It's hard to pick. I would probably have to ask you to send me a certain genre, because I bounce around with music so much. I like so much music that I've got a lot of songs that are close to my heart, and a lot of albums that are close to my heart. But there's a lot of bands out there that they've released music I'm not fans of. So I don't know. That's a difficult question to give you a really honest answer on, to be 100% honest with you. I don't know how to answer that. I got a few favorite bands, I guess. Next question is, where do you see ends to your collection? Well, my collection is based around really 2 shows. Both of those shows are pretty small, so being able to collect everything I want to collect for those shows is very obtainable. I think once I do, I'm going to find other ways to use it into something bigger, but until then, it's just hunting, you know? But through the course of collecting those shows, I've collected some other stuff too, so who knows? I think it's a fun hobby, though, yeah, I don't know where it'll end. Maybe it'll never end. Maybe I'll just start collecting like really weird stuff, like mummified animals, or I don't know, toenail clippings from celebrities. I have no idea. All right, what's the next question? What is the next question? We'll do another collection question. Most underrated Adult Swim show. Well, Outlaw Star was an Adult Swim, so I'll go with Outlaw Star. But if we want to get technical and anal about it, I would say Moral Oral is the most underrated show. There's a lot of good shows out there, but I think Moral is special. It is a very, very special show. What's your favorite Adult Swim show? I mean, the two that I just listed. If I had to pick, one or two. What's your opinion on people that wear band shirts of bands they don't listen to / posers? It's a fashion thing. I don't really get fashion. I'm very much like Bill Gates. I wear like the same clothes every day. And when I like change my shirt into something, it's usually wearing a band t-shirt. And I feel like I'm a superhero wearing the cape of like my favorite, I don't know, band. So I'm not the right person to ask. There's a level of fashion there that I don't understand. I think it's a little silly. I think fashion in general is a little silly and a little overrated. They're just clothes. Okay, this one is really funny. So I got a question from somebody, and then I misheard them. All right, so check this out. So they asked me a question, and I responded to them. Just to clarify, your question was, is your music heavily influenced by Christianity? And their response back was, I said Chris Thiele, not Christianity. And we both started cracking up. And I guess I should answer both. Is my music influenced by Christianity? Yeah, there's definitely elements of it in the music. There's definitely God complexes I speak about. And yeah, there's definitely undertones that have to do with it because I was baptized a Christian. I lived that life for a very long time. Gun to my head, if I had to label myself now, I think it would be agnostic. But those battles of internally that I go through that kind of go back to a God complex or my own mortality are definitely foreshadowed by the fundamental building blocks that came with learning about the Christian faith at a younger age. But as far as, is your music heavily influenced by Chris Thiele? I could only hope so. If you guys don't know who Chris Thiele is, you definitely got to check him out. I'm a giant fan of his music. I think he does an exceptional job at taking classical ideas. I think he does an exceptional job taking classical ideas and contemporary pop songs and finding a way to blend them both. Sometimes it doesn't work. Other times, it's magnificent. I know that Chris Thiele gets a lot of press. Some people say he's highly overrated, but I've always been a fan of what he does. I don't know if that's because I'm a fan of pop music or I'm a fan of technical shredding on an instrument. And that's what he's doing on that mandolin. But I would hope that some of their music would influence me. I think the parallels with Christianity, as well as the parallels to performing, to those having to do with growing up, age, becoming a man, love, loss. There's a lot of relatable parallels there, though I think we can all say that the musicality coming from Chris Thiele and the pool of musicians there is on a completely different level from what I'm doing. And that's not only in their instrumentation, it's in their vocals as well. I mean, if you're a fan of Nickel Creek, I mean, you know what I'm talking about. All three of them sing like angels, and they harmonize better than a lot of other groups. They just work well and have worked well for 20 plus years. That's a really special band. All right, let's move on. We'll do another collection question here. What are some good sites to look for stuff if you just start collecting? Okay, this is a really good question because this is where a lot of people make a lot of mistakes, and even I do. I've made a couple mistakes that have definitely cost me a few bucks I didn't want to spend. Now, I think most people know a lot of resale sites, from Mercari to OfferUp, eBay, Facebook Marketplace, the list goes on. But what tends to happen is somebody's like, hey, I want to collect this thing. And then they go on to eBay and they look up this thing and they see a bunch of people selling this thing. And they'll see a high price and a low price. And then they'll base the value off of whatever the seller is selling it for. and let's say they buy the lowest price one, thinking that they got a good deal, when in turn the lowest price still might be a high asking price for the item. So I don't think, when you're starting collecting, I don't think looking at the sites and basing your information off of what they're showing you is good. I think once you decide on what you want to collect, I would say find other people who collect it as well too, or find people who are really good at digging on the internet. And I don't mean digging for like good ideas, but I mean good at research, good at being due diligent, really hunting for information. Whether that's, scrubbing forums to just, feet to the ground, knocking on doors of collectors and show creators and all kinds of things. You have to be diligent. But the reason that I say that is because these people can help you with information and let you know actual values of things. For a lot of collections, there's no... Do you guys remember Beckett catalogs? I bet you a lot of you don't, but if you remember Beckett catalogs, they were these catalogs that would tell you the worth of basketball cards and baseball cards, football cards. And these were basically like the nation's go-to for the asking price of what these things are. Now, over the years, we've all kind of realized and found out that a lot of that was fake and not real. But there is certain prices and demands that do go with vintage collecting. So familiarizing yourself with that and not getting robbed, for lack of a better way of saying it, is what I would say is what you should start doing as a collector. Finding the sites online aren't hard. It's finding the specific items for a decent price. That's where the challenge lies. That's where you have to hunt. That's where you might have to go to different countries to find things. You might have to really go above and beyond. It definitely takes time. All right, what do we got here? What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? All right, here's an awesome question, and it's for me. It is, what is Mejnun for Layla about? It's one of my favorite tracks. I have the strings from the recording, but I'd like to know the story about it. That's awesome. I auctioned off the strings from the last album, all the strings that I used through the making of the CD, and Paul, the guy who wrote this in, I know I said I wouldn't say names, but Paul's one of my biggest fans. He's the man. He actually bought that, so he actually owns a piece of that song. So that's amazing. To answer your question, Paul, what is Mejnun for Layla about? Well, there's a lot of personal things going on in that song that are connected to the name that I don't know if I'm super comfortable with going into at this time. But a lot of the song was influenced by... I'm gonna sound like a total idiot saying this, so just bear with me. But basically, I don't want to say Eastern mythology, Eastern folklore, I don't know the correct terminology, Eastern literature, there is a story that's very reminiscent of the William Shakespeare story of Romeo and Juliet, and it has to do with a woman named a woman named Layla and a man named Mejnun. And Mejnun means crazy in Arabic, and the song basically means crazy, comma, for Layla. And you might know this story because you know Eric Clapton's song Layla. There's a billion songs about Layla, and they all come from that same origin story. But there's not any songs that I'm aware of that are from the other perspective, which is the man, Mejnun. And the story of Mejnun and Layla is pretty intense, and it's different from Romeo and Juliet in many, many ways. But the story of these two lovers who can't be together for whatever reason is one of the biggest relatable parallels between Romeo and Juliet and this story. And I was really captivated by the story, specifically Mejnun, and how he internalized the issues he was going through without being able to be with the person that he loved. And I thought that, I really related to that. I thought it was really, really cool. And, I wanted to kind of like embody that because I felt exactly for that person. I know exactly what that person felt like. being crazy for somebody else, being crazy yourself, I guess. Um, I'm clinically sane, but I do know what it feels like to feel that way. So, yeah, that would be, the origins of that. I basically put a lot of time into understanding that story, trying to relate it back to something of myself. And, yeah, I hope that answers your question, Paul. What else we got here? What led you to collecting Adult Swim stuff? You don't see it enough, and it's so much cool shit. Okay. What led you to collecting it? Well, I would refer back to what I mentioned previously, which is that YouTube video. I kind of go into the origins of what started this. Again, it's in the description. I'll put a timestamp for it. In short, I think I needed something constructive to put my time into. There was a level of nostalgia with it, but there was also this enticing challenge, as well as just something that I loved. And in my past, because of my self-destructive ways, I never put time into those things. And now that I'm older and I see the world different and I have a little bit more opportunities, I think I took advantage of my situation to explore some things I probably should have explored when I was younger. More constructive paths, more constructive things with my time. And maybe I'm trying to buy part of my childhood back in that sense. But it's cathartic. It's a good thing. I hope you guys understand that. I'm running out of questions here. All right, last question. What's your creative process? That is a very complex question because it depends on what I'm doing. The creative process sometimes is very textbook. It's very traditional. It's very similar to a lot of other compositions, using theory, using the tools in the toolbox to create something with the knowledge that I've put a lot of time into. Other times it's jamming, which is a big component, screwing around, having fun, playing around with what sounds good. That's always a fun thing. The creative process with the Justin Yates music, though, is totally different, and it's really hard to put into words how that creative process goes because it's lengthy, it's painstaking, it's probably ultimately damaging for me, even though it does have a lot of good. It's very difficult. Lots of wasted pads of paper, lots of mess ups, lots of revisions. I wish I could say that the creative process to write the most personal music I've ever written is easy and that it just comes right from the heart and it's so personal that it's just a part of me. And it is a part of me, but it's not easy. It takes a lot to get the thoughts out and to get the right thoughts out, the right words out. And I'm not the strongest writer. I'm not the strongest songwriter. I'm not, my vocabulary is very small. I have a lot of things working against me. So if you enjoy what I do, that's amazing to me. But the songs that you're hearing are a product of a lot of hyper focusing on a lot of different elements that pertain to one specific song. And that is, I know I'm rambling, but even that alone is much more complex than saying, I'm going to play this song in this key, I'm going to play at this tempo, we're going to have these chord changes, here is the structure and form, write music to it, or write lyrics to it, or play this music. It's much different than that. All those components are woven into it, but it's more. It's more personal, it's more advanced. Like I said, it's painstaking. It's almost like the creative process is I get an idea and I can see exactly what that idea is. And then I walk up to an ice sculpture and I need to carve out that idea. And I'm able to do it. I've done it before. But the problem is because of who I am, the lack of an intellect that I have, when I'm carving this image out of ice, in this ice sculpture analogy I've just created, I don't have a chisel. I don't have a hammer. There are some things that I have, some tools from my background that do make it easy, so I do know how to form ice a certain way, or I know how to finesse it a certain way. Or maybe I have a good eye, so even though I don't have a chisel, if I let the ice melt a certain way, it can still represent what I'm looking for. But it's painstaking. I gotta scrape away the ice at the layers that are there. It takes a lot of time. It's really hard to explain. I'm trying to sum it up in a small thing, but I can make just a solo episode about probably just the creative process behind one song. It's very advanced, and probably not for good. Honestly, I think it would be probably better for my mind if I just went into it like, this is the key, this is the something. And I've done that before, but it doesn't produce... It produces okay music, but it's not good music. It's not music that has moved people. It's not music that moves me. And I need to scrape and claw at some of the hardest things I'm doing to be able to create something out of nothing. And I think that some people who are creative will know exactly what I'm talking about and how it's painstaking, but there's an attraction to it. And it's almost like a masochistic kind of like mentality, going back to this block, knowing that you don't have a chisel, knowing that you may not be able to ever have a chisel. Is that analogy too deep? I don't fucking know. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the first episode. I know this one is a little bit shorter, but I think every single episode I do, and the more comfortable I get, I'll be able to stretch these out more and more. Yes, I know this episode had some edits to it, but I tried to do it about 13 times, and I just kept finding myself rambling. So hopefully we can build together a little bit of structure, throw some questions into the mix, try to bring up some topics in future episodes, and just kind of go with the flow. I really appreciate you guys listening, and I hope you stay tuned because I've got some insane interviews lined up. If you're a fan of what I do, if you're a fan of any of the shows I collect, if you're an artist out there, I really think that checking out these episodes will be worthwhile, and I definitely think you're going to get something out of them. I talked to some really talented people, and they dropped some gems that I think are just amazing. Next week's guest will be the insanely talented Tom Foolery. If you get a chance, IMDb him. We'll be chatting about all types of stuff, from his time at Adult Swim to his current project, the rebooted Animaniacs show. If you're a fan of 12 Ounce Mouse, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Adult Swim, or the many more shows that he's worked on, you do not want to miss this interview. I was able to meet up with Tom in Burbank a few months back. I was able to ask him a few questions from the internet, as well as picking his brain on a few different topics that have plagued me for a while. Tom is a very special person. He is a very creative individual, and his perspective on things is very fresh. I think you guys are going to really enjoy the talk that we have. It's going to be a good time. Thank you very much for listening to the first episode of the Tell Me Something Great podcast. I want you to go out in the world today and find something great, because there's a lot of beauty out there. Trust me. Coming from a person who's got a cloud around him a lot, I can tell you there is beauty out there. If you're not seeing it today, just remember that that beauty will come tomorrow. It'll come. Bye, 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 bye.
That's great.